Hey, it's
love that
Conrad,
song.
the mortgage guy, and you're listening to 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. Eric, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing great, buddy. Just in Tampa, Florida. I had some production to do down here yesterday. I decided to spend the next 4 or 5 days here before I head to Indianapolis for Real American Freestyle '04.
Hey, we haven't really been talking too much about '04. We have spent a little bit of time talking about RAF '03. Tell us about Real American Freestyle #4, because that's coming up next weekend, right?
Yeah, it's coming up next weekend in Fishers Arena, just outside of Indianapolis. Great card. '04. We're going to have 4 world title matches on the card, which is kind of a big deal. And we've got 2 of those wrestlers that are from the local area that are bringing a tremendous amount of support with them. So we expect a really excited crowd. Our co-main events are pretty interesting. Wyatt Hendrickson, our world champion at heavyweight, taking on Mason Paris. A lot of people looking to this match. Of course, Wyatt Hendrickson, made the stage by beating Gable Stevenson, which no one really saw coming, other than maybe Wyatt, and made a name for himself there. Big splash. Mason Paris, though, maybe the underdog in some people's mind. This is going to be a really good match. These are two powerhouses. And then you've got Bo Nickel, again, Real American Freestyle champion, and recently got a nice knockout, head kick of all things. I'm going to talk to him about that when I see him Saturday. But Bo Nickel is taking on Yoel Romero. Yoel, a silver medalist Olympian, incredibly tough MMA fighter. So look out for that match. That's going to be a hard-hitting match. A lot at stake. A lot of stakes here. And we've got a whole bunch of other great action. Go to realamericanfreestyle.com. All the matchups are there. And definitely check us out on Fox Nation, because we are making history every single month.
We were excited to be with you here today at 83 Weeks, but we hope that you will certainly check out Real American Freestyle. You can get your tickets now at realamericanfreestyle.com, and of course, watch along on the Fox Nation app. And I got to tell you, man, I'm so excited for your success. I know the name of this show sort of champions the success you had in professional wrestling. Does this Real American Freestyle experience feel like a new lease on life for you creatively?
It definitely does. It's creatively it's a much different challenge than what I'm used to, because in the sports entertainment version of professional wrestling, of course, you're writing your stories, you're creating stories, which is a really fun process, by the way. But Real American Freestyle, this is, as they like to say inside the wrestling business, this is shoot wrestling, baby. This is the real deal. So your stories have to develop organically. And finding those elements of these athletes, real personalities, their real backstories, their real goals, challenges, finding those stories and then bringing them to life is a different challenge, really, than I'm used to. Now, I experienced a lot of that in producing reality television with Jason Hervey. That's one of the reasons why I felt so comfortable taking a run at this, because once you kind of figure out the way to find those stories and then start to package that story in a way that is entertaining for people to watch or allows people to connect to the athlete. That's the challenge. It's different, really, than I'm used to, but I love it. It's just a great opportunity. I don't know any other way to say it. I know I probably oversay this, but don't care. I feel so blessed to have this opportunity, because I'm working with young people, 30-year-olds that are, creative. They're full of energy and passion, and they've got experience and knowledge and resources that are new to me. And being able to learn from them is also, a big part of this, the fun of this for me, really.
Well, I can tell you're having a lot of fun, and I hope that folks will check it out. As a reminder, you sign up for just a few bucks a month and you get access to a whole bunch of content on the Fox Nation app, but you can also check out the previous Real American Freestyle events, and you'll be able to catch next week's event. This might be one of the better values in entertainment right now. So check it out. The Fox Nation app is the home of Real American Freestyle, and go see them in person just outside of Indianapolis next weekend at realamericanfreestyle.com. Eric, enough about shoot wrestling, brother. This week is John Cena week, as folks are listening to this. Tomorrow is the last time we will see John Cena compete. And he's been doing a media tour like nobody's business this past week. It's been a real big rollout. And I'm sure some people are feeling like, hey, this is a lot of John Cena. I'm still looking forward to Saturday, though, because this is the first time that we've really known. I guess, like, even in matches like Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels, we all knew Rick was going to lose that match at WrestleMania. It's not like it was a secret, but it does feel different than when you know going in, win, lose, or draw, this is it. It's a wrestling first that I remember for WWE. Can you think of another time in history something like this has happened?
I certainly can't. But of course, memory and history are not my strong points when it comes to, wrestling. But no, I don't. And this does feel different, even if it has happened before. Obviously, I wasn't around to watch it or didn't pay attention. But I can't imagine that any story like this, a retirement story or tour, if you will, has created that sense of, wow, this is really it. I mean, how often is quote unquote a retirement really it in professional wrestling? This one, we all know, is really it. And I think it's been set up with a little bit of a stumble in the very beginning, in my opinion, with the sort of quasi heel turn. But everything after that has been a John Cena story. And I think reflects John Cena's career and who he is as a person. I'm really happy for John and for fans of John Cena.
We want to know what you guys think of the John Cena retirement tour. That's what we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about. Let us know in the comments. And something I want you to think about through the course of our conversation today, Eric, and I'm not saying we'll tackle it head on right now, but in the back of your mind, be thinking about, if you could have given this John Cena retirement tour tribute to one WCW performer, who would it have been? In this alternate timeline, if WCW continues and now you're going to try this sort of farewell tour, which has worked so well in music and comedy and television and movies, why not try it in pro wrestling? Hell, it worked in sports. I remember when Kobe Bryant announced, hey, this is my last season. For every market he visited, it was, hey, this is Kobe's last visit to so-and-so town. And it made it special. So I want you to be thinking about, hey, if you were to do that for a WCW wrestler, who would you pick? And if you're watching with us here on YouTube, let us know in the comments, who else do you wish would have gotten this sort of farewell type treatment? We, of course, are going to be talking a little bit about Saturday night's main event and the John Cena retirement tour and your favorite John Cena memories and all of that today. So join the conversation in the comments with us here. But this is unusual, that you see someone have a farewell tour like this in pro wrestling, but it's hard to argue with the success, Eric. It seems like it's certainly worked. This is the most profitable year in WWE history. They're setting gate records everywhere. They're setting merchandise records everywhere, just record revenues all across the board. And you got to assume, of course, you and I were not in the room. We don't know, but we have to assume, I think, that they probably sold a new deal to Peacock. And a big piece of this deal is you're going to get John Cena's last match. And I know that there's a lot of television rights discussions about, multi-year contracts, and we're going to go live every week and all that sort of thing. But in an era where I think everyone is familiar with the word WrestleMania, and maybe to a lesser degree, some people have heard of SummerSlam and things like that. I think if you were to just call it John Cena's last match, it feels like, from a bidding standpoint, from an interest standpoint, it might be second only to WrestleMania for the year. I'm talking about to the mainstream from an SEO standpoint. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, without a doubt. And I mean, it just speaks to the power of John's career and the equity he has, the value in the equity that he has with the audience. And it would be, because here's I think from a programmer's point of view, listen, I'm going to be the first to admit, programming for streaming is probably the philosophy behind it is probably somewhat different than commercial television, because it's the customer acquisition part of streaming that is a priority for streaming platforms, particularly ones that are not making money yet because they don't have enough of a subscription base, which is the very reason why I'm convinced a Peacock, for example, or any other streaming platform is so interested in WWE, because in general, professional wrestling, sports entertainment version of professional wrestling fans are some of the most loyal fans you're going to find. So if you know that, which everybody in the television industry does, because they've done their research, and there's been extensive research done across the boards by different research groups, focus groups. You know that not only is sports entertainment a major draw and a great choice for customer acquisition, because it is so effective, because the audience is so loyal, but then you have a major event, almost, to your point, as significant to the consumer, to the fan, as potentially a WrestleMania, because of all the value that John Cena has built for his brand within WWE. It's a perfect combination for a massive amount of new customers that perhaps a platform didn't have before. So it's not only a sales pitch, it's a tactical way to go about building as much of a subscription base as you can with your investment.
Well, it's clear that John Cena has transcended, and he's one of the biggest names in the game now, not just in professional wrestling, but in pop culture, just in Americana. I don't feel like I can turn on the TV and watch live television and not hear John Cena voice over a commercial. So I'm happy that he's getting to go out on his terms. We're going to be talking about that today. We'll also be talking about what his highest and best use may be. We've just heard that he just signed a new 5-year deal with the WWE. What do you do with a fellow like that? We'll talk to Eric about that as well. But first, we need to brag about Mars Men. If you haven't already, I want you to check this out. And I'm talking to you specifically if you're one of those guys who you feel like, you know what, man, getting older sucks. The reason guys think that is because their testosterone production starts going down. And that's not really supposed to happen on their timeline. It's supposed to happen on our timeline, damn it. And if it's taking you a little longer to get going in the morning, or maybe it feels like you're just running through mud and you're just dragging a little bit, well, maybe it's because you need a little boost. And naturally, of course, most of us get down a rabbit hole on the internet and we're trying to figure out what's going on. And a lot of doctors act like, testosterone replacement therapy, or TRT, is no big deal. Hey, just go get a weekly shot for the rest of your life. But what you're signing up for is to spend like $3,000 a year to shut down your body's natural production forever. And that's terrifying. And there's even some fertility issues that you maybe want to look into. Hey, what if you want kids later? All I'm saying is there's a reason more men are turning to Mars Men. And a lot of guys think it's better than TRT. You see, Mars Men gives you the same benefits of optimized testosterone. We're talking energy, strength, and focus, but without shutting your whole freaking body down. There's no synthetics here. There's no needles. There's no dependency. It's like hitting the reset button on your hormone factory instead of shutting it down. And Mars Men uses real ingredients. Finally, you found something here that's going to give you the benefits without all the scary long-term stuff. I can feel the difference. I feel more consistent energy. I feel like I've got better focus at work. I feel like I don't have that afternoon crash that a lot of guys have. And if that checks your box, I think you're going to love Mars Men. It's made right here in the USA. It's third-party tested. And there's even a 90-day money-back guarantee. So literally, there's no risk. Worst case, you don't absolutely love it, you get your money back. But over 91% of users report higher energy levels. Thousands of guys are feeling incredible results. Just check out the reviews on the website to see for yourself. And right now, for a limited time, our listeners can get 60% off for life and 3 free gifts when you use 83 weeks at mengotomars.com. That's mengotomars.com. Use the code 83 weeks at checkout. After you purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Hey, Eric, you've got some history with John Cena yourself. We haven't really talked about this much, but if memory serves, didn't my man throw you in the back of a garbage truck once?
Yeah, he did. I don't know. It's one of the prouder moments of my career. I know that sounds weird, right? Why would that be a proud moment for you? But it's like when I got to WWE, I went to WWE. I had to kind of mentally prepare myself because I knew that, you know, I was in for a transition. I went from the guy running the company that could pretty much do what I felt was right when I felt it was right. I didn't really have to get approval from anybody. And that was pretty comfortable for me. I got used to that. And then to go into an environment where I knew I was just talent and I had to really focus for myself on going into every television show. You know, when I get on a plane and leave Phoenix or leave Los Angeles or wherever I was at the time to fly to a Monday Night Raw, I spent hours talking to myself, reminding myself, here's what I'm here to do. I'm here to take whatever they give me and make it as good as I possibly can. I'm not here to tell them whether or not I think it's a good idea. And I know that sounds simple, but when you're someone like me who's a little driven and I'm capable of getting pretty passionate about things, at that point, when I get to that level, I get pushy. I want to make sure my opinions are heard and all that. And I had to remind myself not to allow myself to get into that frame of mind because it would go downhill fast. It would quit being fun. That's what I mean. And it worked for me. There was only 2 times that I ever took anything I was given, and I'd usually get it the night before, but there was never a time when I took my narrative, whatever was written for me, and said, well, what if we do it a little different? It just never happened. 2 times, though. The first time was I got a script about doing a Kiss My Ass segment with Vince. I threw a flag on that one. Nobody ever brought it up again. They changed the script. They took it out, disappeared. Never another word was mentioned about it. I thought, well, that went nice. And the only other time is when John Cena threw me in the garbage truck. Or what he did is he hit me with this finish. What's it called? What was this finish called?
The FU.
The FU, yeah. I thought I was going to say F5, but then I had Brock Lesnar breathing down my back. Yeah, the FU. Originally, it was John that was supposed to throw me in the garbage truck. And when I got the script, I said, I don't think that's what the audience really wants to see. Let's pay off the Eric versus Vince story. I mean, you bought the company. What's left? Throw that other guy in the garbage. That's the end of the story. And we have a chance to tell that story for those who will, recognize it and, put 2 and 2 together. They'll get a big kick out of it. The rest of the audience who doesn't do the math and doesn't really know why, at least I was thinking that's the way to do it, they're going to enjoy it anyway. It's not like they won't understand it. So I threw a flag on that one and just laid it out and said, Vince, you need to throw me in the garbage truck, not John. I don't have any heat with John. John's going to hit me with his finish. Boom. John gets what John wants, and John's fans get what they want for John. And then we got the other side of the coin. Now Vince gets his shot, and that kind of completes a story for some people, and otherwise just provides a kind of makes sense finish to that whole scene. And same thing, not a word, just changed it, and it wasn't that big of a change, and it made sense. So it didn't have to really require team effort. But that was the only other time, and I'm proud of that because I think it made it better. Whether I ended up in the garbage truck or Vince didn't matter to me. What mattered to me is that it made sense and it got the reaction we'd wanted to get. And it did. So I'm proud of that.
Any chance you remember when that happened?
What do you mean when?
It was 20 years. It was 20 years ago last week.
Really?
December 5th, 2005 was your final Raw as a GM. And that's when John Cena dumped you in the garbage truck. I had to flip a coin. Are we going to talk about that last week or are we going to talk about it this week? I thought, hey, you know what? Since John Cena brought you to the end of your WWE run and now we're talking about his end of his WWE run, I thought, hey, we'll save it for this week. But I just think it's kind of,
wow,
I don't know, ironic that it was 20 years and 1 week later and John Cena's wrapping it up too. Time flies, doesn't it?
Time flies, but the timing is unique too. You look at that was really the end of my, WWE run, so to speak, clearly. Still went back and forth for little tiny appearances and cameos and stuff like that. But that was pretty much it as far as weekly television for me. But that happened the same time John's ending his career. And he was really he was in the early stages of his career when I first started working with him in 2002, I think. He was still pretty new in his career. Wow, it's just fascinating. Yeah, time does fly, man. Time is a real head trip. If you think about it too much, it gets trippy.
There are some comparisons, WWE, well, wrestling in general. Sometimes we hear the thing said, there's nothing original anymore. Everything is a derivative. Everyone's copying or borrowing or straight up stealing an idea. And we know one of the ways that Stone Cold Steve Austin became one of the, if not the top draw in the history of the business, is he had some sort of nemesis in the boss. It was the boss versus the star employee. It was Mr. McMahon versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. And clearly seen a run, we'll call it 04 is when he started to get hot with the US title. 05 and 06 are really trying to establish him as he's not only our world champion, he's going to be the guy. And I find it interesting that they thought, hey, let's lean into what worked with that formula with Stone Cold and Vince McMahon. And now we'll do it with Eric Bischoff and John Cena. Did you see those parallels at the time?
I didn't. Honestly, I didn't, but I can certainly see why that would pop into somebody's head. And yeah,
John Cena as the guy, when you think about him battling for that position, it's interesting because I feel like his story is almost one of perseverance. It almost maybe didn't happen. He was switching up the look every week to match the teams of whatever the colors in the city were. This is the ruthless aggression era. And then we know he becomes the rapper and he tries the heel thing, but it evolves into this never give up, hustle, loyalty, respect, spinning title, babyface. And they were trying some new things. I mean, it's interesting because I think if almost anyone else would have tried to do a rap album, it would have been laughed out, but it actually enjoyed some success. We know at different times, Randy Savage put out an album, and I think once upon a time Hulk Hogan put out an album, but they really tried some things creatively. And I can't help but think if they would have tried all of these new things with anybody else, could it have worked? Or was John Cena capable of taking the arrows and continuing to, what is the phrase you like to use? Endeavor to persevere.
Yeah. When I said early on in the show that John's tour is really a reflection of who John is as a person, and then we talk about hustle, loyalty, respect, to me, that's it. Of all the different gimmicks, perhaps that John tried out early on in his career to kind of find what fit properly and felt organic and real, at least real enough for sports entertainment. At the core of all of it was hustle, loyalty, and respect. And if you look at where John Cena is right now, look at some of his most recent interviews, controversially talking about, in some cases, I think I heard him with, was it Howard Stern or somebody about a year and a half ago, talking about the Vince McMahon situation. And John early on came out and said what he said. I'll paraphrase, but just basically, even at that time, at the peak of the controversy, really, John came out and said, "I'll always love Vince McMahon, and I'll always, he stood by Vince, maybe not stood up for, but stood by Vince." That's the loyalty. The hustle is, as you pointed out, everywhere you look right now, you see John. Television networks and cameras and media aren't, coming to him in all cases. It's him on tour promoting, him doing what made John such a workhorse at the peak of his career, and why I think Vince McMahon knew that he could count on John Cena in a way that perhaps he hadn't been able to count on a champion in a long time. Stone Cold Steve Austin walked out of the building because he didn't like creative. There wouldn't be any potential for that relationship in terms of that ultimate level of trust. But John Cena did the work and did it early on, and he's doing the work now. It's the hustle, it's the loyalty, and I think the respect for the business is in part what you've been seeing creatively, because I'm sure John has had influence, to say the least, over how his career played out. And he's making other people along the way as best he can. within the context of this story and what's going on. I think we're seeing it with Gunther. You know, there's been a lot of discussion. Is Gunther going to be the next guy? Who's going to be the next guy? You know, he has his fan base. He has his detractors. A lot of them got, you know, roasted this past Monday night. The rap on Gunther is he can't cut a good promo. Well, there goes that one. So that's in part because of this opportunity with John Cena. And everybody's got their eyes on this because it's John Cena. Well, John Cena certainly benefits. WWE certainly benefits. But who benefits the most? That guy that you're looking at right now on 83weeks.com. That guy benefits the most. And that's the respect for the business. And what makes the finish of this match so interesting, because if John stays on brand, it's going to be a good night for Gunther.
Recently, we heard John Cena reveal that he didn't stay on brand in his match with AJ Styles. I want to talk about that in a moment, but I think you said something interesting there, you know, talking about, you know, running the play, basically. I think that's the way Dutch Mantel would say it. Hey, just got to go run the play. John Cena has earned a reputation of, or at least that's the narrative we've heard. He gets creative and then he goes and runs the play. And certainly in all the interviews we've heard since he's been back more full-time with WWE, as he always says, hey, that's above my pay grade. So I want you, Eric, to be thinking in regards to, he's going to be able to make almost anything work, even if we throw him something bad. Be the WCW equivalent of that. While you're thinking about that, I want the guys listening to this to have one less thing to think about. I'm talking about my friend Steven Singer. You know, the holidays are here, and Steven Singer, the I Hate Steven Singer guy, has the #1 gift for Christmas. We're talking real natural diamond stud earrings. Everybody knows that gold and diamond prices are at their all-time highest prices in history. But luckily for you, Steven Singer has locked in the diamond studs at the old prices. His Anita diamond studs still start at just $298, still at the same perfect price as last year, the same incredible value. There's no better time to get a pair of diamond studs from Steven Singer Jewelers. Now, this can't last forever. Each pair is eye flawless and near colorless. Beautiful stuff. They arrive with his safety silicone back, so you never have to worry about losing them. Plus, with Steven's full value lifetime trade-in, you can trade in your studs anytime and get exactly what you paid towards a larger pair. Go now to IHateStevenSinger.com, order with fast and free shipping to arrive in time for Christmas, and experience the difference at Steven Singer Jewelers, online at IHateStevenSinger.com. That's IHateStevenSinger.com. So, Eric, when you think about the WCW equivalent of John Cena, was there someone who you felt like was almost Superman in that whatever you drew up, they could pull it off?
Couple. Ric Flair, right off the bat. I mean, once you got over, you know, once he got comfortable with an idea, whatever, you know, creative issues he would have, once he sees it in his head and maybe modifies it to the extent he felt worked best for him and his character. That saying, you know, Ric Flair can wrestle a broom and make the broom look really good. He earned that. You just had to get him over, you know, the first hump or two and getting him into the idea if he wasn't originally. Sting, same way. Sting would actually, in some respects, be a little harder if you ran into a creative, you know, challenge with the idea. He just didn't feel certain aspects of it, so to speak, because Steve was so deliberately thoughtful. Like, he never gave you an answer, a yes or a no, unless it was something obvious, like, do you need more coffee? But if it was a creative, you know, kind of conversation and, you know, maybe not want to say tug of war, but just trying to find the sweet spot together, he was so thoughtful that it took him forever before he really wrapped himself around an idea. But once he did, he was zeroed in. I mean, he was right on target and stuck with it. So those two guys in particular, I think, were in some respects creatively bulletproof. which, probably lends itself to a lot of sometimes the frustration in their careers.
We're talking all things John Cena, and you mentioned just before we took a break there that with regard to this match with Gunther tomorrow, if John Cena stays on brand, I only bring this up because John Cena recently sat down with Chris Van Vliet and did an interview where they discussed his match against AJ Styles that happened earlier this year. You may recall that John Cena reached in his jorts and pulled out a sheet of paper and handed it to the ring announcer, Alicia Taylor. And well, here's what he said. Dude, I just wanted to do something nice for my guy. I didn't even show Alicia until I handed her the paper. I went about it the wrong way. I went into business for myself. I should have gotten permission to do that. And I would have gotten permission to do that, but I told no one about it because I wanted to do something special. In doing so, the people running the show felt surprised, and that's not a position to ever want to put them in because they award me such creative liberty. We're all trying to make these moments special, and we're all on the same team, and it shouldn't be me doing something outside of that realm. If I tell my teammates, hey, let's do it, I can keep it from AJ, I can keep it from Alicia, but if I tell my teammates who are crafting the show, maybe they make it look better. The first thing I did was pull a few creative individuals aside and say, I'm sorry, that will never happen again. I know where I effed up. I'm so sorry. And I went into business for myself. That's not me. I hope you look at my body of work and all the times I've asked for permission. And this is the one time I asked for forgiveness. It got the best of me, but I wanted to do something nice for AJ. To jog your memory, Eric, he basically handed a sheet of paper.
I remember.
Okay. Well, so the audience knows. He handed Alicia a note where he had described AJ as total nonstop action, the ace and undisputed boss of the Bullet Club. So a little tip of the cap to his prior lives in TNA and New Japan. And John Cena is basically telling Chris Van Vliet, hey, I didn't run that past WWE executives and just asked for forgiveness. I appreciate the way he handled this. He really wanted to do it. Maybe he thought they would say no. So this is one of the few times he asked for forgiveness rather than permission. What do you make of this story, Eric?
I love John Cena even more as a person. I mean, I felt that as you were reading it. Now, I didn't see the Van Vliet interview, but as you're summarizing it and reading it, that's John. And I just love the fact that he's willing, first of all, that he even recognizes, and this is something that if a lot of people that are in the wrestling business today and making a lot of money doing it fail to really appreciate and understand. Your relationship with production, the people who ultimately have the final say in how you look on television and how your action appears on television, and how your botches appear or don't appear on television. Those people have your careers in their hands more than you do, frankly. And John acknowledging the disrespect, that's what that was. It was disrespect. None of those production people were probably upset at the fact that they didn't have an opportunity to make the moment a better moment, because frankly, I don't think it would be possible other than camera shot selection and anticipating that, what's going to happen next so the camera can be there as AJ really first begins to realize what was happening. That's a very cool moment, and it's because it's organic, real. And I don't recall whether or not the tight cameras, the handheld cameras on the corner of the ring were able to capture that or not. Hopefully they did. But if they didn't, that might be an example of someone being professionally frustrated that they didn't get an opportunity to contribute. That does make people angry. It's disrespect. And for John to even acknowledge that, even be aware of it, helps explain why John, who is as a character, who he's such a big deal and why it matters to millions of people around the world. But I think it's cool that he acknowledges it in public. I think that coming from John Cena, those words coming from John Cena, and framing how important the creative people that you never get to meet as fans, wouldn't know them if they showed up at your doorstep. Those are the people that make the stars. Everybody else. And for John to acknowledge again, he's on brand. That is the John Cena brand: hustle, loyalty, and respect. And he may have disrespected them, but that was a choice. And I would bet you, and I'm going to ask John next time I get the opportunity, did he make that decision? Because it was a conscious decision to either tell production or not tell production. He didn't come to that decision easily. He knew he had to make one. And I think the equation was, do I tell production and maintain that respect to them, or do I keep it from everybody and try to get the most organic reaction possible? Because sometimes when things happen that no one expects, it just feels more real. Whether it's because the cameras are just a little bit behind or people look a little confused, or whatever that is, there are brief moments in a situation like that where the reality becomes a character in the show. And that was one of the opportunities I would bet that John decided to bet on the moment, because the moments are what people remember, not the camera shots.
People are going to remember that moment for a long time. We want to hear from you. What are your favorite moments about John Cena's career in WWE? Let us know in the comments below. And of course, we're talking about the retirement tour. We're going to talk about Travis Scott. Everybody's kind of been mum's the word on that for quite a while, but Logan Paul recently talked about that. So we do want to touch on that. John Cena appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast and they talked about Vince McMahon. We definitely want to talk about that. And what was supposed to happen? What was the original plan with the heel turn? That was all discussed in the John Cena, Chris Van Vliet interview. So stay tuned for all of that. But Eric, one of the things that I wanted to talk about with regards to John Cena, and I asked you a few moments ago, if you were to try to think of the right guy to sort of celebrate with a proper send-off from his WCW run, someone who was similar to John Cena in that he was worthy of a retirement tour city to city and saying farewell to all of his fans. I asked you that towards the top of the show. Have you come up with an answer? Who would have been the right guy to get a farewell tour in WCW, Eric?
Yeah, I had an answer the minute you asked the question, actually. It was an easy one for me. If now we're armchair booking here,
Yeah.
fantasy booking. If Ric Flair would have been in the frame of mind and had decided it was his time, not somebody deciding for him, because that would never work. But if in this fantasy environment that we're living in it for the moment, if Rick would have been to the point where he had something else he wanted to move on to do and was engaged in the idea, without a question, Ric Flair. And there's not even a close second, to be honest.
You know, that's interesting that you say that. I get why you say that for sure. I mean, we know that Rick was going to wrestle as long as he possibly could. And maybe I helped with some of that. We'll move on. But I do want to ask, when you think about a farewell tour for a wrestler like that, I think most of the time you would think about a babyface. And I know that Ric Flair, while he did operate as a heel, he was, cheered in certain towns and revered and respected. But I think it's interesting when we take a look and we think about who was the face of WCW. I think so many people, yourself and myself included, we probably think of Ric Flair as being the face of that brand. But if you really think about it, WCW became a thing in late 88. So 89, 90, he's gone in 91 and 92. He's back in 93. So he goes 8 more years. So he's got about 10 years there. But I think people associate him with the WCW brand more than almost anybody else. Even though when you think about WCW at its true peak, I'm saying 96, 97, 98, Flair was not necessarily a regular part of those main events. Why don't you think we consider Hulk Hogan to be more of the face of WCW? Because I realize that we would say, hey, it's a brief run, but wouldn't we also apply that same logic to Stone Cold or The Rock in the WWF? Why do you think that is?
I'll just focus on why Rick versus Hulk, for example, or Sting. Yeah, Hulk's association with WCW as a brand was relatively short. In this context, short. Why would he, have that, farewell tour status? I at least associate that, and I think the fans do as well. I associate that with that kind of legendary, iconic, long-term relationship. And while WCW really started in technically 1988 or 89 as a legal entity, that fan base that was ultimately the WCW fan base, which was the Turner Broadcasting footprint at that point in time, was still predominantly, without question, the southeast part of the United States, which was Jim Crockett Promotions and Florida Championship Wrestling, whatever territories where Ric Flair had a major presence long before WCW became an acronym. So I think the legacy, the length of time, generations, really, even by the late 90s, almost 2 generations, have been Ric Flair fans for a long, long time, whether it was under the Jim Crockett Promotions, NWA, or whether it was WCW. It was the same fan base. So people associated Ric Flair, obviously, with Jim Crockett Promotions and NWA, and then transferred that loyalty to WCW. So it was really a much longer period of time in the fans, in terms of fan relationship with Ric Flair than anybody else in WCW. And Hulk Hogan was then and will always be more closely associated with WWE than WCW, despite the revenue and the, cup of coffee in the big scheme of things that, WCW overtook WWE.
Well, we want to hear from you guys. The answer from Eric Bischoff is Ric Flair. If Eric and WCW could have given a farewell tour to any WCW performer, had WCW persisted, of course, who deserved this John Cena treatment, I would have argued Sting. I think that would have been my answer. I think that is a closer parallel to John Cena, but man, who can complain about a Flair retirement tour? I know he would have loved it. And I know that everybody listening will love their Tecovas. I gave my dad some of these last year for Christmas. He absolutely loved them. I've told that story a bunch here. Eric's rocking his Tecovas right now. Anywhere worth going is worth going in good boots. And you can find your perfect pair with Tecovas. You see, Tecovas crafts quality Western boots for everyone. We're talking generational ranchers and lifelong cowboys, all the way down to first-time boot buyers like myself. Tecovas boots are handcrafted with over 200 meticulous steps for broken-in comfort that comes right out of the box. And their in-store experience is unparalleled with expert staff and complimentary beverages and customizations. So bring it home this holiday season with a gift from the West. At Tecovas, you'll find comfort and joy in their exact size, from cowhide and goat to exotic leathers like ostrich and caiman. Whether it's their first pair or their 50th pair, Tecovas has plenty of stars to put under the tree. Beyond boots, Tecovas also has a wide selection of men's and women's apparel, bags, and fine leather goods like belts, wallets, and more. With Tecovas premium broken-in leathers, they're comfortable from the moment you pull them on, so you don't have to worry about breaking them in over the holidays. Tecovas heritage-made cowboy boots are crafted in over 200 steps done by hand in Leon, Mexico. From the first stitch to the final lemonwood peg, Tecovas boots have 200 handmade steps. How do you beat that? That's what's so special about Tecovas, is they feel right out of the box. They know what you need. Whatever your size, whatever your style, you're going to find your perfect boot. They've got over 50 different Tecovas stores coast to coast, so there's never been a better time to visit than during the holidays. Here's what I like to do. When the wife's got me out shopping, I'm going to stop in, I'm going to slow down, I'm going to grab a specialty pour, and I'm going to find the perfect gift. You can do that too. Their expert and friendly staff are there to answer any questions you may have and pick out that perfect pair of boots for you or a loved one, or maybe both. Tecovas even has complimentary boot branding and customizations, so you leave knowing that you made the perfect one-of-a-kind gift. I did this for my my stepdaughter Morgan last year. She was so excited about what Papa Larry got for Christmas. I got her a gift card. And the reason I did that is I wanted her to have the experience of going in the store and doing it that way. But what I want to recommend for you right now is to get an even better deal. Go get 10% off at tecovas.com/83 weeks when you sign up for email and text. That's 10% off at tecovas.com/83 weeks. That's TECOVAS.com/83 weeks. See site for details. Tecovas, point your toes west.
And you know what? I've got a pair of Tecovas. I wear them all the time. They even passed the airport test, meaning I wear my Tecovas boots when I fly cross country, even though I know I'm going to be connecting on a flight, for example, in Denver or Salt Lake City, and I got a 3-mile hike to my next gate. And sometimes I've got to kick it in gear and get to that gate if flights are running late or whatever. I can run through an airport, jog through an airport in my Tecovas boots and not feel a thing. These are really, really comfortable boots. I've got a closet full of really stupidly expensive cowboy boots that look really cool in the store. And man, they're awesome, but they're so uncomfortable they just collect dust. I wear my Tecovas all the time.
Check it out. What a great endorsement. Tecovas.com/83 weeks.
It's time for the Wrestling News Update with Raj Giri.
Raj Giri, I am so glad that you were with us here because there has been so much news going on this week. It's been absolutely crazy. As we recorded last week, we found out, hey, there may be more to this Warner Brothers Discovery deal. Is Paramount back? What do you make of what's going on, Raj?
They're back. Eric kind of called it last week where he was really doubtful that Netflix will end up getting WBD when this is all said and done. And basically Paramount this past week launched a hostile takeover bid for WBD. And so to kind of simplify it, what they're saying is that their offer was superior to the Netflix offer. Netflix offered $27.75 per share and to acquire just the studios and the streaming HBO Max, not the linear channels. Paramount, they went with a $30 per share all cash offer for the whole thing. So basically that includes the linear channels. So basically what it comes down to is what the value of those linear channels is. Now they're going, David Ellis and Paramount, they're going directly now to the WBD shareholders and making their case of why their bid is superior. They feel like David Zaslav basically ghosted them over the past month during their negotiations. Basically, once they were in the final stretch with Netflix, kind of stopped listening to Paramount. So that's kind of where things start now. They have WBD has 10 days to respond. And the gist of it is what the linear networks are worth. Now, David Ellison believes the linear networks are only worth $1 per share. So if you take that $1 per share, add it to Netflix's $27.75, that's $28.75. So the Paramount bid is better. Netflix hopes that the valuation is more $3 to $5 per share. So even if you take that low end, the $3 per share, that makes it $27.75 plus $3 per share, $30.75 per share if you were to include linear. So that makes the Netflix deal superior. So Paramount's really desperate to get this thing. And it's interesting, the betting markets right now, Polymarket, they have the odds of Paramount getting WBD at 49% over Netflix at 37%, with neither getting it at 17%. So betting markets right now with this hostile takeover bid are favoring Paramount to get it in the end.
Honestly, Karen, if I can just jump in, because there's a lot there. And I haven't been following this. Because this stuff changes 6 or 8 times a day. If you're not on top of it, you're reading yesterday's news. But the valuation of the linear networks, I find that one. The gamesmanship behind all of this, though, when and why information is being leaked to whom, by whom, is really the most fascinating story behind all of this. Obviously just the mechanics of the deal and the way it's coming together and the offers and now a hostile takeover, that in and of itself is the premise of a great dramatic story or series in this case, the way it's going on. But it'll be interesting to see politically how much regulatory issues are the deciding factor. The math is close. You can argue one way or the other, which is the most valuable offer when it comes to shareholder value. There are arguments, but you have to factor in the political part of it, which includes the regulatory issues, not only here in the United States, but internationally. That's a risk that comes with the Netflix deal. While on paper, yeah, it looks good, and perhaps from the perspective of some, a better offer financially, but it also comes with a ton of risk. How do you factor the risk into that equation if you're a shareholder?
Raj,
Yeah,
I want to ask
regulatory.
you, I didn't mean to cut you off, Raj, but I know that there's been a report out there. I don't know if this is real or not. I'm wondering if you saw this, but apparently after there was a denial of sovereign wealth behind the Paramount bid, now it looks like there were 3 Saudi investors and some other folks, but also Jared Kushner's private equity firm. So the president's son-in-law is on the Paramount side. That feels like that has to be a leg up if you're wondering about any potential regulatory issues, right, Raj?
Absolutely. And yeah, the reports did come out that there were large investments. So although Paramount's deal is all cash, it includes large investments by 3 Middle East sovereign wealth funds and Jared, which is backed by Middle East cash. So whether that would face hurdles, also, with Netflix, the regulatory issues would be if it's a monopoly with streaming. But on the other side with Paramount, they own CBS and their own channels. And so on top of that, they would be acquiring all of WBD's channels. So you got CNN, TBS, TNT. So does that face, regulatory issues with just how big that will be on the linear side? And Donald Trump, President Trump, just past week, expressed he was upset with Paramount because of an interview they aired, with Marjorie Taylor Greene on 60 Minutes. And he wasn't happy with that interview, how that went. And he said the new Paramount leadership is just as bad as the old Paramount leadership. So this thing, as Eric said, is just changing day by day. It's going to be a mess. But right now, again, the betting markets are favoring Paramount at the end, coming up ahead. And if they do, the WBD has to pay a $2.8 billion breakup fee, a reverse breakup fee for taking the Paramount offer. Obviously, if Netflix wanted it and wasn't able to acquire WBD because of regulatory issues, they would have to pay a $5.8 billion breakup fee.
So, Raj, where are you putting your money? What's your bet? Who's going to get it?
I think Paramount. I think they desperately want it. The synergy is more there. Obviously, with Paramount getting it, there would be a bigger loss of jobs because there is such a synergy between the channels, the streaming services. They're talking $6 billion in synergies, which would be a lot of jobs lost. And Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos earlier this week, he made that case. He said with Netflix acquiring it, they would it would be better for jobs, and that would be the case. But I just think Paramount, they really want it badly. I could see Netflix taking that $2.8 billion, and they don't really need WBD. They have their own studios. Their thing is watching at home with, minor theatrical releases here and there. I just think, in the end, Paramount gets it. And obviously that leads to, how would that affect AEW? I feel like AEW, it's more of a direct move with Paramount, because you got, the Paramount Plus streaming service, HBO Max. I would assume they would combine those as opposed to keeping those separate. And you combine those, you could still have your simulcast with Dynamite if they want to make that deal. Obviously, the big thing is TKO and their relationship with Paramount. And I've heard the argument in the past that, ESPN, they had UFC and PFL on before, but you hadn't seen TKO you hadn't seen UFC that aggressive with counter programming PFL or anything like that. Now you see TKO being more aggressive with AEW, and could it be that they put in a call to David Ellison and just say, hey, this wrestling organization is not worth it. Ari Emanuel is a mentor to David Ellison, so he obviously has his ear. So that'll be interesting to see. Obviously, the current deal for AEW, that's probably going to stay as is until it's up at the end of 2027. It's the next deal, and what options are available. Obviously, Netflix wouldn't be an option if Paramount gets it, because Netflix has WWE. Even if there's a non-exclusive deal, I wouldn't see AEW on Netflix. So that's where things get really interesting.
Raj, this has been a topic in the wrestling chatterbox for a few weeks, but the reality is none of this is going to have any sort of immediate impact on what fans are able to watch at home right now. I mean, we're talking, if something happens, this could be a year, 2 more away.
Correct. Yeah, we're talking years. Again, we're only in year 1 of AEW's 3-year deal. And there is an option year for WBD. So, yeah, we're talking years. Nothing's changing anytime soon. It's just the next TV deal is where things get interesting, but it is a ways away.
Eric, if you were AEW, what would your preferred outcome be? I only ask because I've got a friend who works at AEW, and I'm not saying they're necessarily on an org chart, but that person felt like, and again, I don't know if they have any inside information, but they felt like the Netflix option was worse. And I was kind of interested to hear what your perspective on that is, because if I'm honest with you, I don't know that I can make heads or tails of this. The only thing I can think is, if I'm Tony Khan, I might want a backup plan. I've been sort of loud and proud saying I think the key to all of this is, hey, you want to own the content, but you also want to own the distribution. I think the television rights model, that has a shelf life. You probably want to own it if you really want to be in control of your own destiny and put your hands on the wheel. If you found yourself in Tony's spot, do you think you would have a preference for a Warner acquisition by Paramount or by Netflix?
It's like, do I want to get run over by a bus or a dump truck? I don't have a good answer for that. There's probably a lot that I don't know behind the scenes and structurally, but first of all, I don't really think we know what the real deal is between WBD and AEW. We know Dave Meltzer's version of it, but that's all we know. And let's start with that. So we're talking about, at least in my opinion, a kind of phantom-esque, contract to begin with. And as you and Raj were talking, I'm thinking, yeah, there's all this, behind the scenes, nefarious kind of, John Clancy kind of clandestine communications going on between David Ellison and TKO and whomever. This AEW thing, let's see if we can maneuver a way to get rid of that. Yeah, maybe. I think it's far more likely somebody's just going to break out a $13 calculator and start looking at the value. If a network, whether it's Netflix, whether it's WBD, I would imagine, when you take over a company, you do a complete thorough audit from top to bottom. And you're looking at where your value is. Where am I making money? Where am I losing money? And if I'm losing money, why am I losing money? And the decisions will far more likely be the result of a financial team looking at it and coming up with their perspective. And then you'll have an ad sales team that will essentially do the same thing. And somebody will sit back and look at the data and go, okay, what makes sense and what doesn't? That's far more likely the outcome of any discussions regarding AEW and either Netflix or WBD than, President Trump calling his buddy David Ellison and David Ellison, conferring with TKO or whatever the chain of communication would be. That's fun to talk about and think about, but it's more realistically going to just come down to math and a $13 calculator.
Well, I appreciate that you like to keep it simple, and I know you like to keep it simple, and things are a little simpler since you started using SIGNOS. This has changed the way Eric looks at health and nutrition. He's looking better and feeling better than ever, and you can too with the help of SIGNOS. You're going to notice a difference in your energy and your sleep. You're going to feel better, and a lot of that is what this is about. Some people think that, hey, when we talk about a continuous glucose monitor or CGM, we're just talking about losing weight. Yes, that is a nice thing, but the reality is it just improves your overall quality of your life. And I know Eric can speak to that. You see, here's what happens when your blood sugar spikes. If you eat the wrong carbs for your body, your blood sugar rises. So your body releases insulin to shuttle that sugar into your cells for energy in the form of fat. Now, too much of this over time leads to weight gain and for some, insulin resistance. And that makes it even harder to lose weight. But what SIGNOS does is it pairs a glucose monitor with AI to reveal how your unique body responds to food so you can build better eating habits to help you lose weight, keep it off, but most importantly, feel great while managing your weight. Work for your unique body and metabolism because you're getting in real-time insights into what's going on in your body. You're not reading something on a book. You're not watching a freaking TikTok video. You know, I ate this and this is how my body reacted. Nobody else can give you this information quite like SIGNOS because it's this tag team partnership between the CGM or continuous glucose monitor and the AI. And here's what's really cool. We all make about 227 different food decisions a day. And now you've got a cheat code to tell you, hey, what works for your body and what doesn't. We're all just walking around with best practices unless we know what's going on in our body. Eric found out and he's looking better than ever, and you can too. He's feeling better than ever. You see, SIGNOS has took the guesswork out of managing our weight. It's giving us personalized insight into how our individual body works. This AI-powered app is unbelievable. Pair that with the bio is going to help you build healthier habits and stick with them. And right now, SIGNOS has an exclusive offer for our listeners. What are you waiting for? Go to signos.com. That's SIGNOS.com. You'll get 25% off select plans when you use our code 83weeks. That's signos.com, and the code is 83weeks for 25% off select plans today. So, Raj, we got a big pay-per-view coming up. It's hard for us to imagine, but I saw John Cena, and we're going to talk about him in just a minute, earlier this week, where he said, hey, 3 weeks after I'm gone, no one will give an F because the Royal Rumble will be here, and they'll be moving on. Tomorrow, of course, is John Cena's last match. We'll talk about John Cena with you in just a moment. But the next big event for the WWE is the Royal Rumble. And this will be the very first time we've had a Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia. And there's been some news about this, Raj. What's going on with the Royal Rumble come January 31st?
Yeah, tickets went on sale for the Royal Rumble this past Wednesday and sold out instantly. Now, in the queue, apparently, at one point, there was 750,000 people. Actually, I should say devices, because there are some people who will be on their computer and their phone at the same time, but 750,000 devices logged in trying to secure tickets, which is just unheard of, especially for pro wrestling. I mean, the most I've ever heard of, like back in the early days of AEW, you'd hear reports of like 70,000 in queue, things like that. But 750,000 people, devices is just insane. So sold out immediately. It's funny that WWE has still not officially announced the venue. It's in Riyadh, and I'm assuming it's at the King Abdullah Financial District. The stadium there, the King Fahd International Stadium, which hosts, about 60,000 people. But they haven't announced that yet. And they are building, there's a new building that they're constructing over there that holds about 25,000 people. So I don't know what's going on there. They haven't officially announced the venue. Clearly, they know the number of tickets, so I'm sure they know the venue that they're looking at. But as of right now, the Rumble is sold out. Big success for the first international Royal Rumble, first Royal Rumble outside of the U.S., if you don't count the greatest Royal Rumble.
Eric, if I had a whistle and I could throw a flag, I would do it right now. Do you buy this malarkey that there's 750,000 devices trying to buy tickets? What do you make of that, Eric?
It sounds kind of spooky to me. I don't know.
It's bullshit. It's clearly bullshit.
Yeah. It's promotion. It's professional sports entertainment version of professional wrestling.
Raj, what do you think of that? Do you think there's any way that you buy that number? I mean, what is the idea here that they want the perception of success? I know that sounds silly, but I've always kind of considered, and I know I don't have this accurate, but I know once upon a time, let's talk back, hell, 19 years ago. No, more than that, 29 years ago. The 1996 Kuwaiti Cup. In the mid to late 90s, the WWE would go do tours over there, and they were sold shows or bought shows, whatever you want to frame it as. And so I've just kind of always assumed, hey, if WWE is getting 50 million or 100 million or whatever they're getting for these big crown jewel events, it doesn't really matter how many people buy or don't buy tickets. If this is really about image rehabilitation for the region, do they just want to appear successful? I'm curious. Do you think this is a little bit like we've heard people online who would buy views for their YouTube, or they would buy followers on their social media? Is this the same thing, but for ticketing, Raj? What do you make of this?
So if you were to do a Google search right now on Royal Rumble 2026 ticket queue, there are screenshots of people posting, and the 750,000 plus comes from Turkey Al-Sheikh. Screenshot of someone who had 869,000 people in front of them. So I don't know if that's their government putting people in the queue or manipulating that number or what. I mean, it does seem like a ridiculous number.
It does, but what if it's real?
Exactly.
I mean, it seems like it, and I think, Conrad, you touched on it with, possible that there's duplication possibly in there with people were standing in queue waiting on their phone trying to order. I get all that, and I think there's probably some, whatever the percentage is, I'm sure there is. But what if, we're so quick, including me, by the way, so quick to jump into or just promoting, then over promoting and trying to create an illusion or perception, which is the same thing WWE's done. It's the same thing AEW does every time Tony Khan opens his mouth, trying to create a reality that doesn't really exist, hoping that people will believe it does. Much like we're talking about here, if in fact, Conrad, you're correct and I'm correct, or perhaps, as Raj pointed out, if there's photos, there's going to be videos soon. Maybe it's true. Wouldn't that be fascinating?
And the one thing I'll add with the screenshots is, so people who were in the queue trying to get tickets, if you see 869,000 people in the queue, you're more likely to get out of line. So what do they, by having a number that high, what do they gain? And again, Turkey Al-Sheikh is not posting the higher numbers, the 869,000, he posted 753,000. You're driving away potential people to buy tickets by having a number that large. So, a lot of it could be bots, trying to, the different brokers trying to, but again, 750,000, 860, whatever the number is, whatever the peak was, it does sound ridiculous. It does make me skeptical, but, and I will send you that link here.
By the way, I had to ask Grok because I thought for sure, Eric, this is BS. And I asked Grok, what event had the most ticket demand in history? Because I thought, if that's what we're talking about, this has got to be near the top of the list. This is insane. But according to Grok, and who knows how reliable that is, it says Led Zeppelin's 07 reunion concert at London's O2 Arena had the highest ticket demand in history with over 20 million requests for just 18,000 available seats. Now, I don't know if I buy that necessarily, but still, I thought
anything. What are we even talking about this stuff for? Because nobody believes anybody or anything.
That's right.
Grok. Grok is an innocent bystander in here. Why the hell are you going to pick on Grok?
I will say this. I asked Grok last week what the Thursday night football game was, and it said the season ended Thanksgiving week. So you definitely got to take Grok with a grain of salt.
Okay, well, what can we trust more, Grok, or that there's 800,000 people waiting to buy fucking Royal Rumble tickets in Saudi Arabia? Like, what sounds more believable?
I'm changing my position on this. I'm betting it's real.
Oh God, kids, Santa Claus is right around the corner. I'm so excited.
You were
Holidays are here.
You were
I'm betting those
just
screenshots
because
are
your
real.
father-in-law is Ric Flair doesn't give you the right to be a complete and total cynic.
I think the screenshots are real. Now, whether they manipulated the virtual queue, that's a different story. But again, it's not just one screenshot. There's quite a few out there. I sent a link in the chat for one of them. I think the screenshots are real. Now, whether or not that's manipulated, I could totally see it. I'm a little bit of a cynic, a skeptic with stuff like this. So I could see both of your points. I could see it possibly being real because it is the first Rumble in Saudi Arabia, but that number just sounds ridiculous.
You should run. You're a good politician. You are really good. I mean that as a compliment. I'm not trying to be a smart ass. You're so good, Raj.
Well, listen, I think we're going to agree to disagree. I am with Raj in that the screenshots are not fake. I do think the bots are at play. But one thing that's different about this event that I think we kind of lose sight of when we're talking about it relative to all other events, and I don't mean this dismissive, but I'm just saying all other events, there is a promoter on the other side of this thing who's trying to sell as many tickets for as much money as he can because it's a profit center for him. That is not the relationship with this show. I don't think Saudi Arabia wanted the Royal Rumble because they were hoping to get a return on their investment from this event. That's not what they're looking at with this. Their mission and their goal is a little different than that of a traditional promoter. So we'll see, but here's what I am excited about. It sounds like it's going to be a full house. You see there, if you're watching with us at 83weeks.com, there are screenshots, 868,594 people waiting for their chance to buy some Royal Rumble tickets. Raj, one of the things that we got to talk about before we let you go is John Cena. We, of course, know that as folks are listening to this, tomorrow is his very last match, and a lot of people are skeptical about that. Oh, it's not real. Everybody has a wrestling retirement. He'll be back. And he's stated pretty loud and proud, no, this is it. I gave you more than a year in advance so you could plan for this closure. I'm not going to compete in a WWE ring again. That will be it for me with physicality. I'll never wrestle another match. But he also revealed this week that he's sticking around WWE. What's going on, Raj?
Well, so yeah, John Cena, there was a ridiculous rumor that was out there in October that Cena was unhappy with how his retirement tour had been booked and his camp was contacting AEW. So, yeah, I mean, that was obviously debunked and it was ridiculous. But yeah, he announced that he has signed a new 5-year deal with WWE to be an ambassador. I believe Cena that this is his last match. With a lot of the other wrestlers that have retired in the past, they didn't have many other options after they retired. And so they end up coming back. Cena has tons of options. He's so busy. He's got TV deals and doing commercials. I feel like every third commercial I'm hearing Cena's voice. He's got a movie deal. So he's just so busy all over the place. I could see him, really wanting this to be the end. Because I could see him, if he wanted to, he could have dragged this out until WrestleMania and told WWE, hey, let's now that the Saturday night's main event isn't going to be on NBC, let's ride this to WrestleMania. He could have easily done that, and he's not. And so I think this is it. He's on as an ambassador after that. He's going to be with the WWE forever. He's one of those that he can never believe any rumors that he's talking to anyone else. So yeah, great for him, and it'll be interesting to see how the retirement match goes.
You know what's great for a guy like John in the position that he's in and with this 5-year deal? My take, John knows what his body is capable of doing. I think John has realized that at this point in his career, he can still go out there and he can deliver a great match and satisfy the audience, the real audience, versus those who, grade the technical aspects of a match and all that stuff. He can go out there and tell a story, create the emotion, and deliver a moment at the end of that match, whichever way it goes, that will feel very valuable to people who experience it live or watch it on television. I think John also knows that he's probably not going to be able to do that very much longer, because you can watch John walk not necessarily when he's on camera in WWE, but if you catch a shot of John, making his way to the red carpet or just getting in and out of the limousine, for example, John's got some wear and tear on him. It's obvious he's put his body through so much for so many years and has been able to really maintain, a physical consistency that's very unusual in sports entertainment. But I think he knows it's time, which is another reason why I don't think he'll ever wrestle again. I think he means it. He knows he has to commit to that. But for John, like so many other performers who don't have other options, although John does, John also has the luxury of being able to dip in and out of WWE a couple times a year in his role as an ambassador, and he'll always get that John Cena reaction, which will give him that drug that you can't get anywhere else but in front of 10 or 15 or 20 or 50 or 100,000 people. That drug, John will be addicted to that for the rest of his life, but he'll have an outlet to be able to go and get that hit a couple times a year. And that's the beauty of maintaining the integrity as a performer and professionalism and a connection to the audience that someone like John has. It's very few. Undertaker obviously has it. Stone Cold has it to a degree. Stone Cold just isn't out there much. He's pretty happy on his ranch, but good for John.
Raj, before we let you go, we got to ask if you, I guess I'll ask it two ways. If you had the pencil, who wins tomorrow night, Gunther or John Cena? And then secondarily, what do you think we see? Same answer, or is it a different answer?
I would do Cena. I just think I don't know if Gunther's stock goes up any more than where it already is by getting a win. I could see Cena fighting tooth and nail to lose this match. But I think he's coming off a loss to Mysterio on the last pay-per-view. He's one of the, he's the top star of the century, if you exclude the, short runs of Stone Cold and Rock. He's the top star of the century. And sometimes with wrestling, it's just fun to have a nice farewell, like we had with Sting last year. Just want to see the guy go out on top. So I'd like to see him win, and I think that's how it's going to go. I don't think they book him to lose 2 matches in a row on the way out.
Well, let us know what you guys think below. Do you think that John Cena will win his last match, or will Gunther be passed the torch? Raj, this was a blast as always. Tell everybody how they can keep up with you and where they can hear you.
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter at the Raj Giri, and also, we're me and Matt Morgan. We're trying to figure out our episode of Massive Heat, but check out Massive Heat on the Podcast Heat Wrestling Network on YouTube.
Thanks so much, Raj. We greatly appreciate your time.
Thanks,
Hope
Raj.
you enjoyed John Cena's last match.
All right, take care, guys.
Thank you. Hey, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. It is the holiday season, and that's also the best time of the year for sports. You got the bowl games, you got basketball matchups, you got playoff pushes. It's all happening right now. And while you and I are at home making decisions every day, what gifts to buy, what to eat, which games to watch, there is only one place where it feels good to be right. I'm talking, of course, about Prize Picks. I absolutely love this app. Prize Picks is available now in so many new states, including California, by the way, but it feels like everybody at my office is talking about Prize Picks. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's basketball or it's college football or it's pro football. Like, there is a discussion about sports and about Prize Picks, and they go hand in hand with guys at my office. And it's really, really easy to have fun with Prize Picks. One of the things I like about it is you're really just looking at certain star players. So if you get frustrated with your team, family's pretty frustrated with their Dallas Cowboys this year, you can still enjoy watching the game for other reasons. I also want to give you a heads up. There's a new feature alert. Prize Picks now has early payouts. Have you heard about this? If your lineup gets off to a hot start, you may now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. How about that? Maybe your fantasy season's already over. If your team is cooked like old Double J's is, Prize Picks means you don't have to wait until next year's draft. You get to play fantasy football every week. You pick your favorite players and win when they're projected every week. There's no draft required here. On Prize Picks, how you play is up to you. If you want flexibility, I want to recommend you choose the Flex Play, where you can get paid even if one of your picks miss. And if you want the biggest payouts, buddy, you got to go for that power play. No matter your play, Prize Picks is a great way to get your best takes and put them to the test. I love how straightforward Prize Picks is. You don't have to spend a lot of time calculating your payouts. They make it really easy with their payout multipliers. Whether it's a simple 3x or a big 2000x, Prize Picks makes it easy to understand how much you can win. And it's so easy to play. I'm talking to you if you've never played it before. All you're doing is picking a couple of different players and a couple of different stats, and you're going to pick more and less on a couple of those different player stats. And if you get your picks right, you can cash in. I mentioned that Prize Picks is expanding. Yeah, they're in over 45 states now. I'm looking at you, Texas, Florida, Georgia, California. I also want to mention they've got stacks, meaning you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. Like if you want to say, I want more on Steph Curry's threes, I want more on Steph Curry's assists, and I want more on Steph Curry's points, you can do all of that in the same lineup. And I don't think anybody's doing that but Prize Picks. Join millions of other users and sign up for America's #1 fantasy sports app. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code 83weeks to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. The code again is 83weeks. You'll get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup in Prize Picks. It's good to be right. So we're talking all things John Cena here with Easy E Eric Bischoff today. And Eric, I wanted to ask you, as we're talking about the John Cena farewell, I asked Grok, and I know we just had a little fun with that in our most recent segment about it. Hey, who is sort of the WCW equivalent to John Cena? If you were to parallel their careers, and I know we had fun with Grok earlier, and maybe we'll call him Grok Lesnar for the rest of the show. But old Grok Lesnar said Goldberg. And I thought, what? I don't even know how that could be possible. But the parallels it drew were the undeniable top baby face and face of the company for a while, I guess. Sold the most t-shirts, hats, wristbands, etc. Okay. I could go with that. The crowd being split, but he almost never loses. Okay. I could get with that. And it basically says that the John Cena that we've enjoyed from say 05 to 15, that's sort of the WCW 2000 Goldberg. Do you see the comparisons, or is this totally off base to you?
No, it makes logical sense based on the data points that Grok uses, which is basically scanning, social media for positive and negative comments in detail. It's amazing what AI can do in general. But this is a perfect example of why people in the creative world don't need to worry so much about AI taking their jobs. Because what AI didn't, or Grok in this case, Grok Lesnar, I love that, didn't calculate or analyze was the value and the relationship between the audience and the character on an EQ level, emotional level. And that comes with the long-term nature of the relationship with a guy like Ric Flair or John Cena or any other name, The Undertaker. The audience's relationship goes beyond the math. And that's something that AI can't calculate.
Well, we want to hear from you guys. Who is the John Cena equivalent? I see we got some comments in the live chat saying Sting. I don't know from a WCW perspective that I would go with Goldberg, but I do get, hey, we're pushing for some cooler heels. We've got a Superman comeback. We've got the 5 moves of doom. I mean, I guess I get it a little bit, but the longevity, I think, is the real differentiator for me, because you're talking about John Cena doing it at a really high level. I'm going to say for a decade, 05 to 15. And I know he was around after 15, but not as full-time. But he was full-time for 10 years. He really was, as AJ used to call him in their feud 10 years ago, the face that runs the place. So I wanted to ask you about that. We've seen a series of interviews with John Cena, and everybody has sat with him, whether it was ESPN or Chris Van Vliet or Joe Rogan. Like, he's done a full court press for media, including the late night talk shows. But there was one conversation that stood out to me. He said he wanted a chance to go say goodbye to all of his fans. He was prepared to work 220 dates, the old WWE schedule that included house shows. And he wanted to visit everywhere, including the Mid-Hudson Civic Center. Now, of course, that was a shout out to, it doesn't have to be the glitz and glamour of a big time SummerSlam, stadium show, or WrestleMania. I want to hit all the old spots for all the fans who supported me. And he was basically told by WWE, because I guess as he explains, he had like a presentation where he said this could make real business sense. And WWE basically said, that's not our business anymore. We only need you for 36 dates. If that's not the biggest telltale sign of the evolution of the business and how much has changed, I don't know what is, Eric. What's your reaction to that?
Especially WWE. WWE from the beginning was always such a live event focused business model and was so successful as a result of it. One of the reasons that guys back into the WWF days would talk about being on the road 300 days a year was because it was such a live event centric business model, that being the WWF. And now it's all television, licensing, and merchandising. Live events are incidental, meaning you do them because you're producing a PLE or you're producing a television show. You're not doing it necessarily as a revenue base. It's incidental revenue as opposed to, the focus of your revenue model.
I also want to talk to you a little bit about John Cena's interview tour that he's been doing this week, because one of the things that's come up are conversations about Vince McMahon. And I know that he had this specific conversation with Joe Rogan, and he was asked about Vince. And John Cena said something like, I never wanted Vince to go, but he started all the gangster shit. He's referring to WWE's edgy mainstream evolution. He also says, with regard to accountability, just because of how I feel about a certain person doesn't exonerate them from being accountable for their actions. Just because he started all this gangster shit doesn't mean he doesn't need to be held accountable for his actions. And when he was pressed about, is he really out? Is he all the way out? Cena said, no, he's out. And he also said that in my eyes, I'd like to think that time heals everything. And then he sort of campaigned for a Vince McMahon sit down with Joe Rogan. So we'll start with that first. How bananas would a Joe Rogan Vince McMahon podcast go online?
That would be that I would build my schedule around that event. That's how great. I mean, let's hope it happens.
Yeah, it feels like a huge opportunity. A John Cena, Joe Rogan, or not John Cena, a Vince McMahon, Joe Rogan podcast. But what do you think about him saying, I'd like to think that, time heals everything? Do you think we'll ever see Vince McMahon on camera in WWE again? Or do you think that ship has sailed, in your opinion?
Deep down inside, I think we will. I've said this before, maybe in private conversations. I see patterns, I watch I look for patterns in just about everything. And I went to WrestleMania last year to see Lex Luger inducted. And that was the first time when Triple H, Paul Levesque, got up and was a part of that. Triple H said some very heartfelt things about Vince McMahon. You go back and watch it. Don't rely on me telling you about it. And that was the first time that I can recall, at least on WWE television, that there was a direct reference in a positive way, somewhat positive towards, and a not positive acknowledgement towards Vince and giving him credit for so much. And I went, now that was interesting. It's interesting that it's happening here. It's interesting that it's happening now. This is the first time I've heard it since all the controversy. And then I began seeing more and more references over time. And it started to feel like they're slowly kind of reintroducing Vince into the consciousness of the current audience in a very subtle way. But over time, I expect to see more and more and more of that, so that I'm guessing there's a certain amount of PR rehab going on, professionally managed rehab going on, that will eventually lead to some kind of television appearance. Not on a regular basis, nothing like that. But yeah, I expect to see him on TV at some point. I don't think it's going to be anytime in the near future. I could be wrong about that. You never know. There's a lot of, there's so much we don't know about the relationship between Vince and the principals at TKO. So I'll just keep the door open and bet on the fact that I'm seeing a pattern that suggests I'm probably right.
It will be interesting to see what happens long term with Vince McMahon and WWE. But I think what a lot of fans want to know, and we've talked about it for weeks. I'm going to put you on the spot here now, Eric. Final answer: will Vince McMahon be seen on camera at John Cena's last match tomorrow night?
No,
I don't think so either. What about President Trump? Do you think we get a cameo from him since they're in Washington, D.C.?
I'd bet on that.
Isn't that
Just
wild?
because, I mean, look, right now, President Trump is out there. He's on the 2026 midterm campaign trail. Started in Pennsylvania last night or the night before. So he's going to get out in front of as many people as he can, every opportunity about where Donald Trump stands on policies going forward. 2026 is important. NBC is important. It's a Donald Trump audience. I would bet on that.
So that begs the question, of course, and I know as a rule, we don't talk about politics here on the show, but we also know that the internet wrestling community at large is largely left-leaning, and not a lot of Donald Trump supporters are very loud and proud on social media. Do you think, in a weird way, this is going to taint John Cena's last match if Trump is there? Because I feel like if Trump is there, there's going to be so much negativity towards it that it might actually undermine what they were trying to do for John Cena. I don't have a political opinion on this. I'm just mentioning that it feels like the internet would melt down if that were to happen. Let's say you.
I agree with you, a lot of what you just said, but here's where we probably don't agree. When you said, the pro wrestling audience is left-leaning by a wide margin, I disagree with that.
I didn't say pro wrestling. I said IWC.
Oh, the internet wrestling community. Okay. The internet wrestling community, which really only represents maybe 10% of the broader audience.
Sure.
That bubble of individuals. Yeah. Those are left-leaning individuals. Those people will melt down. Those people, they're going to melt down in glorious ways that are so entertaining to watch on Instagram. It's just fun. It's great entertainment. Like if you're sitting waiting for a plane, you really don't want to get on a phone call and try to conduct any business because your speakers are blaring about you, telling you what flight's coming in and all that. So you can't really talk on the phone. There's really not a lot else to do other than return emails and look at silly shit on Instagram. And some of the silliest stuff on Instagram has got to be the internet wrestling community meltdowns when you offend any of their sensibilities. It's a hoot. But what was the question?
Well, I just wonder, do you think that, this is supposed to be a John Cena celebration?
Oh, okay. I got it. Will the internet wrestling community's sensitivities reverberate to the extent that it will ruin the moment if Donald Trump shows up and we'll get boos instead of cheers? Get it. Valid concern, by the way. Where is Saturday night's main event? What city?
Washington, D.C.
Ooh. That makes it tricky, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because that is a decidedly liberal city. I mean, lopsidedly liberal city. That's a risk. And honestly, it could go either way. I'm not familiar enough with the city and the demographics, particularly wrestling demographics there, to take I wouldn't make a bet on it, but my guess is it would be a bad calculus for Donald Trump to show up.
It's going to be interesting to see how this is received. I'm not trying to make the comparison. I realize it's a totally separate situation and circumstance. Unfortunately, the last time we saw Hulk Hogan on WWE programming. We didn't know it was going to be the last time we would see Hulk Hogan on WWE programming, but he got booed. And I know that that's probably not something he expected or hoped for or wanted. And a lot of people believe it was because of previous political affiliations. And if they've got Cena out there saluting the sitting president, which, by the way, in any other time in history, probably would have been kind of cool to think that, hey, wow, we've got the freaking president of the United States at a WWE show. Like, when does that happen? That's pretty big time. So I'm not even saying this is going to happen, but I'm saying if it does, I could see how, man, it might actually not get the reaction that we hoped that John Cena would have on his last match. So I feel like they're almost in a damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because if the president wants to come to a show in Washington, D.C., how do you tell him no?
No, you don't. And here's the deal. As I'm sitting here, I give you my honest, my gut reaction without thinking through things too much, which is why I ramble so much and get lost in my own thoughts. But what if it went the other way in Washington, D.C.? Because let's look, the composition of a sports audience. Now, LA was a unique situation, and you got to keep that in mind. But anywhere else Trump goes, any other sporting event, including tennis, he gets huge positive reactions. So why would this be any different? Maybe the internet wrestling community is allowed negative, kind of twisted place, but I'm not so sure you could bet 100%. I mean, it's risky. Like I said, the calculus is scary, but Donald Trump is also a guy that's willing to defy convention and not necessarily go with, the flow. And it may look bad on paper, and he may feel that he's got enough support. His instinct, his gut, which has been dangerously good. He's got great instinct. He may feel differently and may show up. It, in and of itself, will make it an interesting night to watch.
I know that the internet wrestling community is not going to like this, but it is a fact that this company, WWE, is owned by TKO. They also own UFC, and Donald Trump is a regular at UFC events, and he gets a hero's welcome seemingly everywhere he goes in the UFC. So I'm not going to say that it is a different audience from WWE. It certainly is a different audience, but the way the internet will respond to this and react to this, gosh, I just hope it doesn't. I hope it still checks all the boxes that John Cena wants. I think that that's what John deserves. So fingers crossed that it goes however John wants. Here's what I know. I don't have to stress out about it, and I don't plan to, thanks to Into Cloud. We've been bragging about this sponsor for a while now, and I'm excited for you guys to try it. If you haven't already, you got to go check it out, man. Today's episode is brought to you by Into Cloud. Your 2025 goals can wait, but your burnout can't. Into Cloud gets it. This season, calm comes canned. Into Cloud is your online dispensary for better nights, smoother mornings, and calmer holidays. Now with zero sugar, 0 calorie THC sodas, along with your favorite gummies and pre-rolls. All federally legal THC, DEI certified, lab tested, and shipped discreetly. Because you can't pour from an empty cup, but you can sip your sanity back. I got to tell you, the first time I tried Into Cloud, I was running on caffeine and chaos, one gummy later, and I felt like myself again. Now I pair it with a 0 sugar THC soda, same piece, but faster delivery. This is perfect for you. If you're stressed out at work, you're stressed out around the holidays, maybe there's family that stresses you out. And a lot of people get in their feelings about lost loved ones and things like that. Man, if you just want to get out of your own head and just feel like you for a minute and take a break from all that, can I recommend Into Cloud? It's working for me. I know it's going to work for you. If you're 21 or older, I want you to go right now to visit indocloud.co. While you're there, use our promo code 83weeks. You're going to get 25% off plus free shipping. That's indocloud.co. The code is 83weeks. You'll get 25% off, free shipping, and a better way to unwind. That's indocloud.co. And the promo code is 83weeks. Enjoy responsibly, and thanks to Into Cloud for making the reset part easy and a little more refreshing. So we're talking, of course, about John Cena. Well, this episode has really been all about John Cena, and I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the missteps or perceived missteps of this John Cena retirement tour. We mentioned earlier that he's been on the interview circuit and everybody's been talking to or about John Cena. But when he sat down with Chris Van Vliet, they had a conversation about, hey, what should have happened? There was lots of questions about a heel turn. Was The Rock supposed to be involved? Was there supposed to be a match with The Rock? What was Travis Scott supposed to do? And John Cena said, who cares? It doesn't matter. We can talk about what could have been until the cows come home. And I think that's what's great about the people who are left standing. Certainly me and Cody. What's the change? This? All right, let's go. And so he also elaborated on being the last to know in creative decisions, which is certainly the way it was framed in the Unreal documentary that was produced for Netflix, sort of behind the scenes. John said, I don't care. First of all, I'm always the last to know. It doesn't trickle down to me. If you watch Unreal, the process is genuine. I talk to Rock, and then the last guy I got to call is John. Well, I'm usually the last guy they call because I'm the easiest. And he also talked about the heel turn. And he says, this is just my perspective. What I like is people are talking about it. And the cool thing is people who are critical of it apparently had some idea in their head about what they wanted, which is great because that means you're attached. That means you care. So I appreciate that he's trying to take a healthy approach to this, Eric. And he's saying, hey, if you're critical of it, it means you care, because if you don't care, then you won't be critical. So I like that he's talking about the passion of the WWE fan base. But I got to say, when you start with who cares, I think that way, because a lot of fans are really invested in this, not just with their time and their emotions, but with their wallet. And I feel like a lot of fans would be like, well, hey, I care. Every time I turn around, there's a higher ticket price and things cost more than they used to. And I'm investing in this and I'm not feeling fulfilled. And I know they can simply watch and change the channel, but I don't know, for John Cena to be this media savvy PR expert, starting the explanation with who cares, I think he probably wishes he had that one back. What say you?
Who cares? I mean, it's such a if all you do is read the first two words or listen to the first two words of a pretty good explanation, I think a very revealing one, because I think it's honest. If you're so offended by that and you feel hurt by that for whatever reason, then who cares? Really? I mean, what are you supposed to do? Sanitize every word you say in an interview with someone while you're trying to explain something that's giving your real honest feelings about something, and be afraid to do so because there might be somebody out there who's so offended by the first two words of a 5-minute conversation. I don't know. It's hard for me to feel empathy for people like that.
Well, I think you missed the point of the question, respectfully. If I'm a fan and I'm disappointed in something and I've expressed that online and the people who took my money said, we don't give a shit, don't you think eventually we start to lose some consumer confidence by doing that? Like, we don't care.
No, because he's talking about a storyline. He was not talking about the prices of tickets, for crying out loud. We're conflating, emotional issues and concerns now and internet wrestling headlines with the subject of that interview, which was, tell me about, the heel turn and, your perspective on it, or whatever it was. I didn't see the interview, but based on what you suggested to me, the conversation was specifically about disappointment in the way that storyline started out, not in ticket prices. So conflating the two confuses me.
Well, I guess what we're talking about is a lot of people are going to beat up this John Cena retirement tour for a long, long time. And they're going to say, shoulda, woulda, coulda. And a lot of that is going to fall on the Travis Scott discussion. Earlier this week, Logan Paul had rap personality Joe Budden on his Impulsive podcast. And Joe had recently gotten into WWE and attended some events and started paying some more attention. And he saw rappers like Travis Scott appearing with WWE. So he asked Logan what happened. And Logan is really the first person to talk about this. He basically says that Travis Scott no-showed them. They were supposed to be building towards a big 6-man, and then it never happened. because Travis Scott just disappeared. You spent a little time working with these different celebrities and trying to get that crossover mainstream appeal. Is Travis Scott, does this sound like a little bit of deja vu from Dennis Rodman? We know ultimately he showed up, but it wasn't always easy, right?
Oh, not even close, man. Not even close. Dennis Rodman was Dennis Rodman, right? And he had his priorities, but one of those priorities was to get the work done and to be as good as he could be. Now, you can question his lifestyle and the impact that had on his ability to be the best he could be. But while he was late from time to time, and yes, you had to make sure there were people handling him to get him from point A to point B. Yeah, that's a pain in the ass. But once he got where he was supposed to be, and he always did, he never no-showed us. There was never a concern as to whether or not Dennis would show up when he was supposed to. Not even a thought. Can't compare those two individuals at all, but celebrities in general, because look, you take somebody that's an entertainer in another form of entertainment, an actor, rapper, whatever, ice skater, it doesn't matter. And you put them into the world of professional wrestling, they have a perception of what that is and how difficult it may be or what it may be like. And then they get involved and it's a completely different reality than what they expected most of the time. And some people that are primarily athletes, they embrace it. They'll overcome it. It's a challenge. They want to be good at it. They want to put on a great show. They want to look good out there doing it. Dennis Rodman, Kevin Green, Steve McMichael, you name it. People that get in here and actually do the work and want to be good at it. Bad Bunny did the work. He felt comfortable in that environment. Logan Paul obviously excelled in that, taking from one world and being thrust into another, a la Joseph Campbell, hero's journey. He's Logan Paul's, having a tremendous amount of success doing Logan Paul things, and he decides, hey, I think I'm going to give this wrestling thing a shot. He does, and absolutely excels at it. That's rare. More common is like, oh, why did I get into this? So I think Travis probably no big deal and found out otherwise and probably wasn't prepared. Dennis was always ready. He not always on time, but he was always ready.
I think the Travis Scott misstep in WWE is going to be something that people talk about for a long, long time. I hate that it happened during John Cena's retirement tour, but in the end, it's all going to end well, and it's all going to end tomorrow night. I thought the timing was curious. I don't know if you saw this. We're not going to end on a negative note, but there was one piece of negative stuff this week about John Cena that kind of caught me off guard because I'd never heard this sort of stuff before. David Otunga, who we know and have had on the program before to talk about the various legal issues, we know is a former WWE superstar and a real life attorney. And he shared some of his experiences with John Cena when he was trying to cut his teeth in WWE. And it wasn't altogether positive. And I think that this is perhaps tarnishing his sterling reputation to some. But I think it also proves more than anything that, hey, John Cena is just a real guy. And I'm not advocating any of the bad behavior that was discussed with the David Otunga interview, Eric. But I think everybody has the compassion, or not the compassion, but the capacity to change and to compare and hold John Cena accountable now for a long story that I guess these guys have made amends long ago. But I understand Otunga's trying to build a YouTube channel, and the timing right now is everybody's talking about John Cena. I mean, hell, look at us. We're talking about John Cena. He did have a story to tell, and he shared it. But it really does come out of left field because it feels like any sort of negativity about John has always been played very close to the vest. I've never heard anyone come out publicly and be critical of some of the bad behaviors of John Cena. Have you ever heard anything like this? This is a first for me.
Never. I've never heard it. I've never seen it. Now, I'm not close friends with John. I want to make that clear. I think the world of him, and we stay in touch occasionally via text. But I spent a lot of time around John. Socially, a couple times. Famously, John Cena helped stir the pot along with Bruce Pritchard, convinced me to wrestle Jerry Briscoe on his 60th birthday, sent me home the next morning with a broken thumb, and I had a carpet burn from the Marriott Hotel bar. a carpet burned on my face that made it look like I got my ass kicked the night before. So I got off the plane, come home to my wife, and she thought I ended up getting my ass kicked. She said, "What happened?" And I told her. I challenged Jerry Briscoe to a takedown contest at the Marriott Bar in whatever city we were in. And John Cena was the one that stirred that crap up. John Cena and Bruce Pritchard conspired just to watch Briscoe torture me. That being said, when I watched John Cena backstage for several years now, every Monday night, once a month in pay-per-views, I'd see John backstage. I never once saw him treat anybody with disrespect. Quite the opposite. It's just not been my experience.
Well, listen, David Otunga has a YouTube channel that you should go check out if you want to hear his story. It's his story to tell. But I think a lot of that speaks to maybe the culture of WWE. And that's kind of what I want to talk about with you a little bit here, Eric, because for a long time, and I know that wrestling has evolved and wrestling has changed. I mean, just earlier, we talked about how John Cena on this farewell tour wanted to work 220 dates, but that's not the WWE model. They only needed him for 36. It's effectively a television company now. They're not really running house shows, and neither is WWE or AEW. And I know that you were sort of down on that when you first got the reins of WCW. Like, hey, if we're losing money every time we go out, here's an idea. Why don't we stop doing the things that lose us money? Ta-da! And you were a business genius from then on. But that is, as we're dissecting the way wrestling used to be, wasn't it effectively like a traveling circus? Here's these guys, these group of superior male athletes who are operating on very little sleep and effectively abusing their body, taking these hard bumps in the ring every night, sleeping like shit, trying to eat on the road. And it does become this fraternity. This brotherhood is the way I've heard people talk about it before. And we hear guys who would tell stories about, throwing beer bottles at the road signs as they went down the road. And I'm not saying that happens now, but certainly that was the way it was. I think that sort of culture lent itself to more of a college locker room, a high school locker room, and find ways to entertain themselves. And that leads to some of the hazing or the busting balls. And I think that was once upon a time part of the culture. I don't know that it is as much now. Do you think that's because the schedule has changed, because the leadership has changed, or because society has changed, Eric?
I think the business has changed. I think the business at the WWE level particularly has changed so much. It's all of the above. Certainly it's leadership. It's what's tolerated and what's not, what's expected and what's not expected. And that can come in the form of written policy and contractual language. It can also come in the form of the culture. And it doesn't have to be in a contract or in a policy. I think that has definitely changed. I think the athletes themselves have changed. I think the video game culture makes it possible now. And I know this sounds, silly, especially coming from a 70-year-old, but I think, as negative as, video game, the industry itself can be controversial from time to time because of violence and all kinds of stuff. It gives talent something to do to occupy that time when they're away from their families, when they're away from the comforts of their own home. And that cannot be underestimated. People don't realize, we kind of realize because we hear so many stories about rock stars and, the dark side of the entertainment industry in general. Look at the life of a stand-up comic. They're really sad stories most of the time, many of the times, because it's life on the road. You're disconnected from all of the things that provide you security and comfort. So you've replaced those things with other things that kind of numb you or distract you from what you're really missing. And I think with video games now, it fills a void when you're stuck in airports. It gives you something to do to occupy your mind other than maybe, I don't know, I think I'll just go sit at the bar and watch some sports on TV and pound a couple bourbons before I catch my next flight. I know it sounds silly, but I think it's also to a degree true. The culture has changed both in terms of leadership and the corporate culture, but I also think the culture has changed among this newest generation, or newer generation of athletes that are getting into the business. I think they're smarter. I think they realize that lifestyle that everybody glamorized and likes to talk about, the good old days, is not a healthy lifestyle. I think we've seen a lot of examples of how it ends badly, and I think people are aware of that. I noticed that when I first got to TNA in 2009. It was a different culture. AJ Styles and the Frankie Kazarian and Daniels and the group of people that they hung around. There was a group that went out and partied and hung out at the bars afterwards, and the fans were there, and it's fun and it's energy, and it is fun. And a lot of wrestlers did that, but there was also a good segment of that roster that didn't. They got together at night, went up to the rooms, played some video games, ordered a pizza, and went to bed. Many of them were still working. Frankie Kazarian, AJ Styles, So I think the corporate culture has changed. I think the society, the culture has changed, and I think the demands of the business have changed because the talent is not on the road. They're not disconnected from those things as much as they were. All of that combined leads to, I think, a healthier environment for talent and the people associated with them.
Well said, Eric. Something else I know you and I agree on is Blue Chew. Fellas, you already know what time it is. It's time to level up. Blue Chew just dropped something crazy. I'm talking next level championship belt gold-plated energy. Blue Chew Gold is the newest innovation from the #1 chewable ED brand. This ain't your grandpa's little blue pill. This is the 4-in-1 beast that's setting the gold standard for performance. We're talking 2 ingredients for blood flow to keep that rocket pumping, mixed with apomorphine and oxytocin to turn up the arousal and connection in your brain and body. Blue Chew Gold dissolves under your tongue, and it works in as little as 15 minutes. That means you can get it on quicker and stay in the game longer. Elevation without hesitation. This is peak passion and peak performance in a single tablet. We're talking full ignition and make life easier by getting harder, and discover your options at bluechew.com. We've got a special deal for our listeners. Get 10% off your first month of Blue Chew Gold with the code 83weeks. That's promo code 83weeks. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. So, Eric, as we're winding down, we're really home stretching here on the way to John Cena's last match. We've talked about it. We've teased it. We've queued it up. We got to get your final answer. We imagine he's going on last when the final curtain falls tomorrow night at Saturday night's main event. Will John Cena ride off into the sunset victorious, or will Gunther stand tall? What say you?
I'm betting on hustle, loyalty, and respect. John to stay true to his own brand for so many years. And with that in mind, I'm going to focus on the respect part of that brand. And I think he's going to do what he can to take Gunther to the next level, including putting him over.
We also want to spend a minute here and talk about, there's going to be a lot of people watching this. This could be an opportunity to introduce a new story, a new wrinkle. I'm not trying to be critical of WWE creative, but I'm saying this card is really loaded with a lot of next generation guys, like Obi Fema against the WWE champ Cody Rhodes. Like, I think Saul Ruka is going to be taking on Bayley. I know that the WWE tag champs are going to be defending their titles against some TNA talent. So they're really focusing on the next generation. Supposedly that was a suggestion from John Cena. I'm all for that. But it feels like if you know you're going to have a larger than normal audience and it's going to be an all eyes on you situation, do you think they use this show to start a new big time story? Because I would hope that they're going to use these new eyeballs that are watching this to not only say farewell to John Cena, but hopefully try to set the hook on, boy, I can't wait to see what they're going to do next. And a lot of people are curious. Does that mean we may get a cameo from The Rock? May someone like Chris Jericho be reintroduced? We don't know if he's leaving AEW. We don't know exactly when the contract's up, but is the timing right for a large story to start tomorrow night on this show, Eric?
Look, if they expect a larger than average rating, if there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on this show, then obviously, like any other night that you would have, an unusually high or above average, viewership expectation, you're probably going to want to take advantage of that. So from that, just mathematically, logically, yeah, sure it does. I'm not, but if I really had to sit down and analyze the opportunity myself in terms of what I would do, how many of those viewers could I imagine are there only because they want to see John Cena's last match, which means they're not likely to come back no matter what I do. They're coming in to sample one night only, so to speak. There's going to be a small percentage of the overall number that represents. I don't know how big that percentage will be. Some of it is feel. I don't know that I would necessarily, because I wouldn't want anything to overshadow John's moment and the finish of that match. I would want that to be the most important thing that people remember. So if I do have a hot angle that I want to bust, do I want to bust it on a night that I don't want it to overshadow something or something that I've been building for months? That kind of doesn't make sense to me. I know there's an argument for it, but I think I would not do it. I think I would instead utilize this show and the new viewers, as you refer to them, those being the ones that only showed up for John Cena or primarily because of it. I would rather use that audience to expose my next generation of talent, because perhaps they're going to see something there that they didn't expect. If they haven't been watching WWE for a while and have only showed up because they want to be a part of this, historic wrestling moment, why not showcase your young stars? Why not do something hot there to possibly attract a night-only audience and convert them to weekly fans?
There's been a discussion online, Eric. John Cena, I believe, did an interview where he said he thought he was going to close the show. And I think that's logical that people would think that he would close the show. But some people would point to Brian Alvarez's report that he's heard that it will in fact open the show. So I want to talk about that here for a minute, because you've programmed a lot of TV back in the day. I know that very recently they did the Goldberg last match back in July, and his farewell speech was cut off for time. I think that was on NBC, not just Peacock. So there is a differentiator here. This will not be on NBC. It's strictly on Peacock. So that's part of it. But the other part is, if they have him open the show, maybe they do want to try to send fans home happy, and they're concerned that if Cena loses in the first match, that maybe they can overcome that with more positive outcomes or interesting storylines or whatever. Maybe they don't want to close on a downer of him perhaps losing. Does that change your opinion? And if you had the book, would you want John Cena out first or last?
That's a two-part question. Yeah, I may have, quote unquote, in this scenario, the Paul Levesque spot, but Paul has to talk to NBC. They're going to have a voice. So if I had to, you know what, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't make an argument for putting John on first. That whole what if could be perhaps conjecture. None of it felt like maybe it was right. It all felt clunky. I don't think it makes any sense. I don't know that it ever really happened. Now, I could be proven wrong. And hey, my percentage rate is high enough right now in my predictions that I can afford to take a hit or two and still be good. I just don't see it happening. It doesn't make any sense to me from any perspective, from a network perspective, even on Peacock, from a streaming perspective. You spend all this time creating a destination, creating anticipation. People can't wait to get to the destination because they're going to be a part of something big, and we're going to give it to them in the first 20, 30 minutes and then send them all home, especially if John loses. Nah, what sense does that make? Why not just have a John Cena match and call it a night? That makes no sense to me from a programming point of view or from a WWE perspective. Nah.
I totally agree. I don't think it makes any sense. I think you close with him, and I do think I might try to start a new storyline. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the coming weeks. You know, there's lots of time before the Royal Rumble. You know, John Cena's last match is going to be on the 13th of December, and 6 weeks later is the Royal Rumble. So we've got a long time between PLEs, even though this isn't, I guess it's called the Saturday Night's Main Event, but it certainly feels like a PLE. And I guess they're bringing out a lot of the legends. There's been a report that even though he missed the most recent Saturday Night's Main Event, Jesse the Body Ventura will be there on site for John Cena's last match. And if I'm honest with you, Eric, I'm kind of surprised that you're not. I thought, given your history and early association with John Cena and him throwing you in the trash can and all that, they would have at least had you there for the wave. What do you expect as far as acknowledgement from John Cena's history and run? I mean, that's got to be the theme of the whole thing. Were you invited? Was it ever discussed as far as you know?
Oh, I don't know if it was ever discussed, but I never got the phone call. What's the date on that?
Tomorrow?
Tomorrow? It's a good, it's a good thing I didn't, because I couldn't have made it, and I would have felt bad turning it down, but I didn't get the opportunity to do that.
Well, we're going to get the opportunity to talk a little wrestling history next week here on the program. We're going to be running up on anniversaries where Vince McMahon back in 1997 decided to say to himself, I'm getting my ass kicked by Eric Bischoff. Maybe I need to change Monday Night Raw. He cut a promo that I guess has been referred to since as a cure for the common show. That happened on this anniversary next week. We'll also be talking about Chris Jericho, because way back in 2001 next week will be the anniversary of when he beat Stone Cold and The Rock in the very same night. There's lots of other things to discuss about this week in wrestling history next week. Of course, we'll be talking about John Cena's last match, the fallout, and all the news that's fit to print. And we'll be on the go home streak for Real American Freestyle 04. As a reminder, it's happening next weekend just outside of Indianapolis. You can pick up your tickets now at realamericanfreestyle.com. And of course, you can watch like I'm going to watch on the Fox Nation app. Only a couple bucks a month, and you get Real American Freestyle 1, 2, and 3, and 4 next weekend. We'll be live on the Fox Nation app. Eric, any final words for John Cena and his illustrious career just match?
No, man, just Godspeed. Don't get hurt. Enjoy every moment of it. Life's nothing but moments, man. And this is a special one, and just try to hold on to every one of them.
Want to also give a little love. I know Eric and I are echoing the same sentiment here. We are a 3-man team here and have been for a long time on 83weeks.com. And today, Dave Silva, our crack producer from day one, was not with us. Unfortunately, as we were set to record this morning, he woke up to the news that his father passed away. So I want to ask that everybody who enjoys our podcast or has gotten to know Silva through the years will lift him and his family up in some prayers. And I know it's got to be a challenging time. I can't imagine the pain and torment that they're going through. As luck would have it, as we're recording today, we're recording a day earlier than we usually do, because Silva had planned to take his family to visit his dad, and he missed it by one day, and his dad's no longer with us. Just a horrible, sad story. Can't imagine. Want to show some love to Wesley Burleson for stepping up and trying to make us sound and look as good as we can on short notice. But Silva, such an invaluable team member, really, from day one. And getting the news that you've lost your dad right here in the holidays, it just keeps on getting worse. My heart goes out to the Silvas. Bischoff, you got anything you want to share there?
No, same feelings. You know, this entire family were in my prayers as soon as I heard the news. And I encourage others to do the same, because the comfort that comes with it really helps.
If you see him on social, show him some love. Think about him and his family right now, and we'll endeavor to persevere. We're going to enjoy John Cena's last match tomorrow night, and we'll be back next week right here on 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. Thank you, Wesley.